East Harlem.
Not for sale.
South Bronx.
Not for sale.
Bushwick.
Not for sale.
Lower East Side.
Not for sale.
New York City.
Not for sale.
Brooklyn.
The Citywide Alliance Against Displacement is here. We've been here. We've been to Gracie Mansion where he lives. We're not here to endorse any candidates, but we will give the time to anyone who voices an opinion against this, lack of a better word, the guy inside. I'm gonna be diplomatic here today. But these folks have plans, they have an agenda, and obviously they're contrary to what the mayor is selling this community. The newspapers, obviously, you've seen the debates. They've locked out all the other candidates the same way they've locked us out of the discussion. So to the credit to the candidates that are here, we want to thank them for being here. And in a few minutes, you will be hearing their point of view on the discussion on housing in the city of New York. There's a sorry state of housing in 15 communities, and in particular today, the Chinatown Lower East Side community. First guest is David Nieves from NMAS. He's got a few minutes and a few words that he'd like to impart on you. David.
OK， 现在我们请NMAS 的 David Neal 发言。Hello, folks. Whose city? Our city. All right, folks. I'm from NMAS. I'm also a NYCHA resident, and I've lived on the Lower East Side all my life. So I want to just say that we are sick and tired of how Mayor de Blasio is destroying our communities. De Blasio was elected as a roaring lion of progressive ideals. What a lie!
Yeah.
In our community, the Lower East Side in Chinatown, de Blasio worked with City Council member Margaret Shin to stab us in the back. Like de Blasio, Shin says she loves our community, wants to help the people. But then both de Blasio and Shin kill our Chinatown Working Group rezoning plan.
Right.
If we had this plan, none of these luxury skyscrapers like Extel would have been able to come into our community.
That's right.
De Blasio is selling our NYCHA too, and letting luxury developers build on our parking lots and open spaces like the Guardia houses. We know that de Blasio is not just wiping out our community, but neighborhoods all around the city, especially low-income neighborhoods, communities of color like ours. We can't allow a racist like de Blasio have another 4 years selling us out. We call on everybody in New York to vote against de Blasio.
That's right.
We need him out.
Out.
We also need to step up our organizing in all our communities. Let's make sure that whoever is elected on Tuesday represents the working people. By the way, I just want to mention Lesan. This is an organization called Lower East Side Organized Neighbors. By their efforts and the help of an environmental lawyer, they discovered that irregularities took place in the development of the Extel and LSRDs in the lower Manhattan area. Now this could have been avoided if the elected officials had done their homework and made sure that these developers followed procedures and the zoning laws. Now they're coming up and saying that they want to bring a ULERP, but it's all a Band-Aid. They're just pushing the program forward by suggesting this now. Had they done this before, this wouldn't happen. So remember, folks, if you organize, take the time to organize and get together and put a plan of action together. Things can happen. Don't let these people railroad you. You got to fight. You got to fight. Who's willing to fight? Raise your hand if you're ready to fight.
Hell no, we won't go. 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 Hell no, we won't go.
Hell no, we won't go.
Hell no.
Chinatown,
Not for sale.
Lower East Side,
Not for sale. Chinatown,
not for sale.
Lower East Side,
Not for sale.
South Bronx,
Not for sale.
East Harlem,
Not for sale.
Brooklyn,
Not for sale.
Queens,
Not for sale.
New York City,
Not for sale.
Chinatown,
Not for sale.
East New
York.
not for sale,
Bushwick.
not for sale,
East Harlem.
not for sale,
South Bronx.
not for sale,
New York City.
not for sale,
East New York.
not for sale,
Lower East Side.
not for sale,
Chinatown.
not for sale,
East New York.
not for sale,
New York City.
not for sale,
De Blasio.
Moscow,
De Blasio. De Blasio.
Moscow,
De Blasio. De Blasio. De Blasio.
Moscow,
Blasio.
Moscow,
Blasio.
Moscow,
Blasio.
Moscow,
Blasio.
Moscow,
Who city?
our city,
Who city?
our city.
Our next speaker comes from East Harlem. Her name is Marina. She has great thoughts for Mr. Wilhelm de Blasio. Marina.
OK， 现在我们请 Marina 东哈林区的代表。
Hi everyone, thanks for coming out. Yeah, so I'm from El Barrio and we have a little, our take on the rezoning that's being proposed uptown is a little different from the Chinatown community, Lower East Side, because they just kind of decided that what the city's planning came out of something that the community asked for. And actually we never asked to be rezoned. The speaker, our councilwoman, Melissa Mark Viverito, spent a lot of time and money putting together what they call East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, which was mostly stakeholders, people who have an investment in the community being rezoned. And so the plan is supposed to be saying that we want rezoning when we don't. And the city turned around and said, well, you know what, that's too, we want you to go even higher. So now the city's proposing 30-story buildings, 25-story buildings. If you go to East Harlem, it's a tenement community, 5-, 6-story buildings. And they're arguing that they have to do this in order to create affordable housing. But that's not true because the median income in the neighborhood will not qualify 38% of the people to move into what the city's calling affordable housing. 30% AMI is still above the levels that people can afford in East Harlem. So when they give away city-owned land to private developers to say 20 or 25% set-asides, right? So we're going to be displaced at the rate of 3-to-1 or even 4-to-1, right? Because the people coming in to live in the market rate buildings are not going to look like us. They're not going to be our children. They're not going to come from the neighborhood. So we're going to be displaced at the rate of 3-to-1, 4-to-1, and then the 20 or 25% left over is still not going to be for us. So 20 or 25% still means zero affordable housing. It's a middle-class housing plan. And that may be good for other communities, but it's not good for El Barrio. If you can afford a market rate apartment, then go live somewhere else.
Right, absolutely.
And we're telling Mayor de Blasio to step down because he's not listening to us. He just had a wonderful, shining tribute yesterday with a book published in Time just before the election saying he's doing a wonderful job about ending the tale of two cities, and we know that that's a lie. It's a lie. We still have two cities. And he's catering to the real estate industry that have lined his campaign coffers, just like my local councilwoman, Melissa Mark Viverito, has raised $1 million. You know what? She's not even being reelected. She's raised $1 million and spent over $500,000. And you know what she's actually running for? District leader. Wow. How do you go from being the speaker of the city council to wanting to micromanage your neighborhood so much that you will not support young people coming up in the ranks to run for district leader. What kind of leadership is
What a
that?
shame.
For shame.
Shame, 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 shame.
So
shame,
she needs
shame.
to go as well. We had a candidate forum for city council candidates running to replace her, and her handpicked successor decided not to show up. Right? And that's really, you know, that's unacceptable. Well, we went ahead and had it, and two other contenders, one of them may be here, I don't know, but we grilled them as well. And you know what, people ask me, so who are you endorsing? You know what, I'm not endorsing anyone. My job is not to put anyone into office. My job is to make sure that you do your job when you do get into office. And when you don't do your job, when anyone doesn't do their job, what happens to them? They get fired. So we're telling de Blasio to step down because he has not fulfilled his promises. We're telling Melissa Mark Viverito to go away.
Go away.
Leave us alone. El Barrio does not want to be rezoned. You do not give away city-owned land to build a 68-story building on public parkland. You're not doing us any favors. Just go away and go away now. De Blasio se tiene que ir, que se vaya para el infierno.
Pay for play?
Not okay.
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 All right, all right. So we have another speaker from the Chelsea community. He's a longtime activist in labor, international and community issues. He's a good friend to the South Bronx Community Congress. He just came on board to the Alliance, and I'd like to bring to you Mr. Johnny Stevens.
Thank you, Eddie, and I'm glad to be a part of the Alliance. I'm working with a coalition now. It's Oscar Mandela Coalition that's dealing with the displacement of people from Puerto Rico. $70 billion of people being forced out of their houses, out of their schools, out of their neighborhood, their postal service, their special needs services. And this is the same thing that's happening with de Blasio.
That's right.
It's the same thing that's happening in our community all over New York City. De Blasio, in this picture here, two coins of the same side, one representing Wall Street and one representing the developers. This is the same thing that's happening with PROMESA, which Wall Street is charging the people of Puerto Rico $70 billion.
It's horrible.
But I like to further that struggle, that we don't have to look toward de Blasio, because we're going to look toward a people movement that's standing right here in front of me.
Yeah.
Woo! We're going to look toward the workers, the unions, the unemployed, the homeless, the disabled community, the youth. This is what we're going to look toward. We're going to build a mass movement independent of both parties. And who becomes our allies, work for it. Who become our allies, prove it. This is what we need, a people power movement, a united front to take on Wall Street and de Blasio policy, which is racist to the core.
Yes, sir.
It's racist to the core. It's national oppression. It's displacing people by the millions. It's telling someone who can't afford a house, you won't have it. It's telling someone homeless, you will never have a house. It's saying you won't have nothing affordable. This is to the Latin, Asian, working, Caribbean. This is national oppression. This is Wall Street. Wall Street. So I ask you to join us tomorrow for another action to help broaden this struggle with this people movement for the Citywide Alliance. It will be a rally tomorrow at Brooklyn March Against Gentrification, Racism, and Police Brutality. Please join them so we can broaden ourselves and ask them to come to these particular rallies so we can go forward. People power.
People power.
Republicans would never have been able to get away with what these so-called progressives have got away with. Do you think a Republican would have been able to take a playground in East Harlem and convert it into luxury housing? Do you think a Republican would have been able to build a massive tower on the East River in two bridges that dumps raw sewage into the East River? This would never have happened with a bunch of Republicans. It's happened with sellout Democrats, and that's why I'm running for public advocate. Now more than ever, we need a real public advocate who won't look the other way after 8 investigations into pay-to-play corruption on Mayor's record. We need a real public advocate who 4 years ago, Tish James, she promised that she was going to sponsor the Small Business Job Survival Act. But guess what happened? She flip-flopped and abandoned the bill. The greatest flip-flop in the history of the public advocate's office.
Shame, 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 shame. Shame, Tish James.
It's these so-called progressive Democrats. They're the ones that have allowed the rezoning of neighborhoods like East Harlem and the giveaways of our green spaces and our libraries and our hospitals to build more luxury housing, which is causing the displacement, which is making the city less affordable when they say that they have an affordable housing program. Well, that will all end. On September 12th, you have a choice. Do you want the same old policies of these so-called progressive Democrats, or do you want some real change? And I'll be the real change. David Eisenbach, public advocate, September 12th. Remember that.
Okay, coming up next, we have a Lower East Side resident with a great perspective on what's going on in the community. Brian Winters, please come to the mic.
下面我们请这个下东城的居民，也是小商户的一个业主，他叫 Brian Winton。
Hello, thank you all for coming today. I'm here as a resident and a small business owner on the Lower East Side, and I'm also a member of the group, the Lower East Side Dwellers, which works on quality of life issues in our neighborhood. I'm really worried right now about our local small business community. My own small business actually was displaced just around the corner from here when our building was demolished for condominiums. And so it's very personal for me, displacement. And, I think it's really important to remember that our mayor is controlled by real estate interests, and he refuses to stand up for our local small businesses and to create policies that protect them. Right now, there are so many empty storefronts in our neighborhood, which I'm sure you all noticed. And landlords aren't even trying to fill them. They're writing the loss off on their taxes while they wait for a chain store to come along who can afford the large amount of rent. And the mayor talks about ending the tale of two cities, but he keeps rewarding his developer campaign donors with more opportunities, and he sells out our neighborhoods. Services our community needs, like affordable grocery stores, laundromats, hardware stores, can't afford to stay, and we're left with chain stores and bars, the only kind of businesses that can pay the high rent. Yeah. All the nightlife also creates huge problems for people in the neighborhood, like crime, noise, traffic, and trash. And it becomes really hard for elderly people, the disabled, families with small kids, to find day-to-day services they need near their homes because our local small businesses are displaced. We need a mayor who supports community-led rezoning plans like the Chinatown Working Group Plan, which would protect our neighborhood from speculative overdevelopment. We also need a mayor who supports the SBJSA, which is the Small Business Job Survival Act, which gives small businesses support and leverage when it comes to renewing the lease on their commercial spaces. This is so important. Mayor de Blasio refuses to take action to protect our small businesses that have made New York what it is today, and as a result, we're all suffering. We deserve better.
Small business cannot be spoken about without including the significance of having cultural businesses in our communities. It's very important for us to have our cultural businesses to represent us, especially New York City, which is an immigrant city. When small businesses are replaced, sometimes our community, they go without conversations because most new immigrants come alone. So they need folks to that know their community, know their background. So what the city is doing is a collective economic genocide of our communities. If I can't say it any more clearer than that. If my neighborhood, when I was a young man, we didn't have all bodegas, we would be having difficulties communicating with the Anglo community, who obviously did not go the extra mile to take us, consider us other than economic collateral. So it's very, very important to recognize candidates that talk about preserving communities and small businesses. Let's not forget these small businesses. They are the engines that keep our collective communities together. I want to take a moment to acknowledge two city council candidates that are among us. These are folks that, like we said, we're not making any endorsements, but we will listen to folks who are consciously talking the talk to preserve our communities. And I'm talking about today Ms. Tamika Mapp. Where are you? Hey! There you are. Raise your hand. Tamika. If you're from East Harlem, you got to recognize this sister. And Mr. Marte, where are you? Where are you? He's from District 1. He's one of the candidates who's been with the Alliance. Look for his name Tuesday. One more individual who wants to be your community leader, the whole 5 boroughs. His name is Mr. Richard Bashner.
I'm running for mayor because Mayor de Blasio has sold us out. He has sold us out to developers. Yes. He has sold us out to lobbyists. Yes. He has sold us out to big campaign contributors. Yes. He ran on a tale of 2 cities, a city in which there were 2 types of New Yorkers, those who were taken care of and those who were not taken care of and ignored. And what has he done as mayor? He has ignored all of the people who he said he would take care of. He said he would lift up the most vulnerable New Yorkers and make sure that all of our interests were protected and that he would listen to all New Yorkers. Instead, what do we have? 40% more homeless people than on the street last year, almost 4,000 people. If we had 4,000 Columbia students on the street, we'd do something about it tomorrow, wouldn't we? But we don't. And why not? And we also have 62,000 people who live in shelters right now. Now, the mayor said that that was unconscionable when there were 53,000 people in homeless shelters when he took office. It's up 20% since he took office. We have had 100,000 students, New York City students who deserve to concentrate on their studies, be homeless. How can that exist in the richest city in the world? Right? And what's caused it? Is it just market forces? No, it's the mayor's destabilizing real estate policies. He's encouraged real estate speculation across the city. He's turned over the city to the developers. He sold out City Hall. He accepted $3 million from developers who were doing business before the city. In some cases, $100,000 or more for some of the developers. And by the way, campaign contributions are limited to under $5,000. So how did the mayor get away with accepting $100,000 plus contributions? Okay? Now what do we need to do? We need to do it differently. We have to stop the top-down Soviet-style planning that ignores all of our neighborhoods' needs. We need to listen to the people in our neighborhoods. We need to preserve our neighborhoods. We need to preserve our public housing. We need to preserve our parks and our libraries and our public spaces. We need to not sell land for luxury real estate development that displaces people in the neighborhood. And we need to take immediate action. We can't wait any longer. We need to declare an emergency. We don't have a hurricane right now, but we have 4,000 people living on the street tonight. It's not acceptable. It's too long. And we need to change the way business is done in New York City. We need to work together and not disregard the needs of the communities. We have plans from the people in the city who have worked for years to put together plans in East Harlem, in Chinatown, in the Bronx, in Sunnyside, in Brooklyn, all across the city. No one in the Lower East Side, for sure. The mayor is not listening. When we come up with plans, he ignores them. I've been on the community board for 18 years, and I'm finding that it feels pretty futile lately, because I know whatever we say, the mayor's going to ignore and do whatever he thinks is right. And it doesn't matter how much we plan, it doesn't matter how much we care. And what I want to say to you is I'm really glad to see everybody here today, because in this time of Donald Trump and Bill de Blasio, when people feel like we have no choice in our government, we can't make a difference, nothing matters, why even bother go out to vote? All of you are here today on a Friday afternoon, spending your time and lending your voice and your support to the idea that we all have to hang together, or we most assuredly will hang separately. And we have to get together, and we have to work all across the city to do what's right and listen to all New Yorkers and stop listening to the developers and the lobbyists and the campaign contributors who have bought this mayor and who he has sold us out to. So on September 12th, on Tuesday, you have a choice. You have a choice to make a difference. And we can turn everything around in this city, and it has to start at the top with the mayor, because everything flows from that. And once we change the mayor, and once we have someone in who will listen to the neighborhoods and work with the people of New York City, everything will be different, and we will preserve housing. We will have all sorts of things that we don't have right now, which is people working together to do what's right for New York. Thank you.
De Blasio has proven that the Real Estate Board of New York has taken him from progressive to the man in the dark side. Melissa Mark Viverito, I'm glad that she's being term limited, because she too is responsible for the destruction of East Harlem, which was a cultural pearl for Puerto Ricans in the city, and if not the whole nation.
And the South Bronx.
And the South Bronx, we have leadership that is out to lunch when it comes to protecting these neighborhoods. Right now, the South Bronx is being targeted for massive development. There is a 1,300 apartment development that's on the map, and I see that as genocide of the South Bronx as we know it. When folks, community folk like I, would try to buy property, we will always deny. We didn't have credit. We didn't have the right associate. We didn't have a rabbi, right? So we get a rabbi, hey, this guy's supposed to be progressive. He's supposed to be for the other city. We are the other city. What the hell's going on? What, now we're not good enough? We're good enough to get you elected, but we're not good enough to work with you? Listen, yo, the job is called democracy. We vote you in and we vote you out. We don't have the money, but we got the people. And we are the people that are here today. Come Tuesday, we will decide. And you already got an idea where this decision is going. We hope to be back out here before Election Day come November. So come Tuesday, make the right decision. You've heard many of the voices here that are working with you, that are signing with you, that you must not forget. Like I said, let's stay together, let's brainstorm, let's come back, and let's keep reminding these folks, we're not here. The 50 communities that he targeted, they're not going anywhere. They could try with their landlords, they could give us lawyers, but they still will not protect us, us who are vulnerable in these communities, who have low-income jobs. We're the most vulnerable, you know, because they didn't decide to go into Chelsea or West End or pick one of these ritzy communities, Fifth Avenue. They didn't go in there and say, hey, we're going to move Fifth Avenue, we're going to move you out of here. They decided to go into communities of color. Brother Johnny said it correctly. There is a war around the world against working class, poor people around the world. So we need to stay together. Let's regroup. Let's keep the conversation going, and let's come back. See you then.
团结就是力量，团结就是力量，这力量是铁，这力量是钢。 热烈和英明，刚爱强，向着种族歧视开国，让一切不公平的制度死亡。反对贵族，反对比肩，打倒白四行，保护下东厂。团结就是力量。 团结就是力量，这力量是铁，这力量是钢，比铁还硬，比钢还强。向着种族歧视开国，让一切不公平的制度死亡。反对贵族，反对比肩，打倒白四行，照顾下东厂。 团结就是力量，打倒白四好。
Let me translate the content of the lyrics so people understand. So the song, the lyrics of the song goes like this: Unite is strength, unity is strength. This strength is iron. This strength is steel, tougher than iron, stronger than steel. We open fire against racial discrimination. Let all the unjust system drop dead. We fight against high rent, against displacement. Take down de Blasio, protect Lower East Side. Take down de Blasio, protect East Harlem.
Yeah.